Oh my goodness, are they a fantastic capability. The battle plan is drawn, the assets are in place, and the world holds its breath. While Donald Trump decides what degree of support to give Ukraine, a threat closer to home has emerged. The Caribbean Sea, a war zone. Another suspected drug boat has been sent to the bottom by American firepower. Washington calls it a counter-narcotic surge, but in Caracas, the brutal dictator Nicolas Maduro calls it an act of war. Today, on Battle Plans Exposed, we uncover the truth. This is not just a drug war. This could be the prelude to a full-scale American invasion. We expose Trump's real concerns, the shadowy CIA operations inside the country already, the hardware being massed offshore, and we reveal the US military's secret blueprint to take down a nation. This is The Sun's Battle Plans Exposed, Trump's Caribbean War. We're talking about, of course, Venezuela. Now, where does Venezuela sit in the world? It's out under the Caribbean Sea. It's surrounded by Colombia, Brazil, Guyana, and of course, it's got the Caribbean islands with Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago just offshore. This is where the American interests are concentrating at the moment. Venezuela itself, with Caracas, its capital, and the Orinoco River running through the center. A nation with more oil than Saudi Arabia, concentrated in what is referred to often as the Orinoco Belt. There's a much bigger field that goes through the whole of the northern part of the country, but in country, a lot of it is concentrated around the Orinoco River and is then exported out through the Caribbean Sea. It should be the jewel of South America. So how did it become effectively a failed state, a narco hub, and America's #1 enemy in the hemisphere? The story begins with one man, Hugo Chavez, the charismatic socialist who promised a paradise for the people. He seized the country's oil wealth, but his revolution soured into corruption and incompetence. When he died, he handed the keys to his protege, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro finished the job. He crushed dissent, he jailed opponents, and he ran the economy into the ground. Millions fled. The country collapsed. But Maduro and his cronies got rich by turning Venezuela into a gangster's paradise. According to one expert, as detailed in The Sun, Nicolas Maduro leads the cartel de los Soles. Go search the article. It's well worth a read. But also take into account the parallels that we're seeing here between the leader, the political leader of a country, the criminal networks underpinning him, and Vladimir Putin and his oligarchs. They're allied with drug cartels, terrorists, and every anti-American rogue state they could find. Russia, China, and Iran all propped up the regime, building military and intelligence bases right in America's backyard. If you ever wanted to get Donald Trump riled, drugs. We saw whenever he got elected, the pressure he put on Mexico and Canada about fentanyl coming into the United States. People, massive movements of people, and corruption. And that's what got the attention of the White House.
And a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
For President Donald Trump, the issue is simple. It's about America first. And he sees two major threats streaming out of Venezuela. The first, crime. He calls it an invasion. The brutal Venezuelan prison gang, Tren del Agua, earlier this year, Trump designated them as a foreign terrorist organization. He claimed that Maduro emptied his prisons to send them across the US border. Second, geopolitics. Trump sees Venezuela as a forward operating base for America's enemies, a Cuba on steroids. He's dusting off a 200-year-old policy, the Monroe Doctrine, the idea that America controls the Western Hemisphere and no foreign power gets to meddle in it. And when meddling happens, the US has a long and bloody history of correcting the problem. From Chile to Guatemala to Panama. When the US decides that a South American leader has to go, they go. And now, all signs point to Maduro being the next on the list.
He is one of the largest narco traffickers in the world and a threat to our national security. Therefore, we've doubled his reward to $50 million. Under President Trump's leadership, Maduro will not escape justice and he will be held accountable for his despicable crimes.
In Venezuela, the war has already begun, not with soldiers, but with spies. Just 2 weeks ago, President Trump confirmed that it authorized covert action by the CIA inside Venezuela, probably concentrated around Caracas. What does that mean? It means funding opposition groups. It means recruiting agents on the ground to help spread propaganda to turn the Venezuelan military against Maduro and the people. It means finding, fixing and tracking high-value targets. Those heads of the criminal gangs that we've already mentioned, those political leaders, those that are supporting Maduro, but also, equally importantly, those that are Maduro's opposition and tend to be opposition in hiding. Venezuela has reportedly captured CIA spies attempting to spark a US invasion. Recently, Caracas claimed it arrested a group of mercenaries linked to the CIA. Of course, Washington denies it. But this is the classic playbook destabilization before the real attack. And while the CIA works in the shadows, the military is tightening its noose in plain sight. This is the US Southern Command Enhanced Counter-Narcotics Operation. Battle plans exposed can reveal this is the largest US naval buildup in the Caribbean since 1965. 10 warships, including guided missile destroyers, an amphibious assault group with thousands of Marines, F-35 jets, and they've moved to Puerto Rico. And just recently, the USS Gravely docked in Trinidad and Tobago, and that's only 7 miles from the Venezuelan coast. And it's there for joint exercises. Exercises are usually an excuse for building up military capability. Vladimir Putin used them before going into Ukraine. This isn't a drug hunt, it's a blockade, a constrictor force, choking off Maduro's regime and probing his defenses, sending a clear message to him that we have a big stick and we're waiting for you. These strikes on so-called drug boats, they're target practice. The US has killed over 40 people in these strikes in September, testing how fast Venezuela's air defenses react, testing what other intelligence mechanisms that Maduro is focusing on the US military. The answer is Venezuelan military doesn't do anything. The US is sending a message. We own the seas and you're next. All wars start in the information domain. It's sending a message, and that message is a diplomatic message. The military buildup is an army of diplomacy, but this is diplomacy by other means. Diplomacy, war, military buildup, they're all connected. It's a message. If you don't negotiate, if you don't do what we say, we've got the ability to force you to do it. When President Trump gives the go order, the team that will kick in the door are the Marine Expeditionary Unit, or the MEU. It consists of a command element, a ground combat element, an aviation combat element, and a logistics combat element. It is 2,200 Marines, a fist of steel, floating offshore ready to strike within hours. It is the complete package. It's not reliant on bringing the US Army, the US Air Force, the US Navy together. The US Marines have got everything all together, whether you're a pilot, a ship driver, a logistician, or an infantry soldier on the ground, you're a Marine first. The MEU is a self-contained killing machine. It is a ground combat element, a reinforced infantry battalion, over 1,000 grunts with M1 Abrams tanks, artillery, and light armoured vehicles. It is an aviation combat element, a flying toolbox of death, Vipers and Cobras for close air support, Ospreys to fly troops 50 miles inland, and F-35 stealth fighters to hunt down Venezuela's ancient air defence. And it has a logistics element with its own doctors, its own engineers, and supplies to fight for 15 days unsupported. The MEU is America's 911 force. They don't start long wars, they finish short ones. But of course, they can then be backed up by the regular US military, the US Navy, the US Air Force, and the US Army, who are all preparing, both in region and back in continental United States, to support any MEU operation that's needed there and take it for as long as it's needed. As we're recording this episode, It just happens to be the 361st anniversary of the British Royal Marines, who are slightly older than the US Marine Corps, who were formed 227 years ago. What's their jobs? It's to break in, to break the enemy's most valuable asset, and to get out. In Venezuela, the target list is clear. Of course, the MU is supported by the US Navy, the US Air Force, and the US Army, as I've already said, ready to provide additional capabilities like aircraft carriers, B-52 bombers, B-1 bombers, rapid assault troops such as the 82nd or the 101st Airborne Division, all backed up by special forces if needed. I've been fortunate enough to work with US MUs before in the Balkans, and oh my goodness, are they a fantastic capability. You know, you're dealing with some of the most professional fighting elements of the US military, and they understand everything because they work together. They work as Marines first, but they know how to integrate air, land, sea, armor, soft-skin vehicles, all in a combined operation and have an effect rapidly on the ground. If you ever wanted a force to back you up, a Marine MU is the force that you want. And they have a number of them stationed in different parts of the world, ready, all afloat, ready to carry out operations on behalf of US interests at a moment's notice. So how would the US carry out an invasion of Venezuela? You know, tongue-in-cheek on my social media profile, I say that I specialize in taking over countries. I've only done 2, and they were under international agreement. They weren't ones where those countries were objecting. But we're going to apply some of that theory to what we see here. Sources in the Pentagon and military theorists point to a brutal 3-phase plan based on shock and awe doctrine. Day 1, HR. 0200. This won't start with bombs, it'll start with silence. US Cyber Command launches a massive attack crippling Venezuela's power, its internet, its military command and control. And at the same time, the CIA assets, those assets that they've got on the ground with the Joint Special Operations Command teams, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, who are already in country, launch a number of kill or capture raids. This is what Putin wanted to do in Kyiv to try and capture Zelensky and his teams, but failed miserably. The primary target in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Secondary targets, his inner circle, and the Collectivo gang leaders. The goal, cut the head off the snake before the body knows it's under attack. As chaos reigns in Caracas, phase 2 begins. This is the MU's job, supported by the rest of the might of the US military. Meanwhile, the US 82nd Airborne Division is put on immediate notice to move. A brigade is probably already in the air, parachutes at the ready, and in a very public display of readiness, B-52 bombers are continuously in the skies, and another aircraft carrier joins the fleet. Of course, the B-52s will be supported by B-1 bombers, stealth fighters, B-2 bombers, and anything else the Americans can put out to send a message. But they're not going to invade Caracas. That would be a bloody urban nightmare. Instead, they land here on the coast of Lake Maracaibo, and they capture the La Chinita airport just to the south of the city, with airborne and air-landed troops going into the airfield, deployed in waves of helicopters and possibly by parachute, while simultaneous beach landings are made so that they can link up with those airborne and air-landed troops. US jets from the MU and the carriers will dominate the skies, keeping Venezuela's ancient F-16s grounded. Of course, before any sea invasion and before the airborne or air-landed troops come in, ready to destroy any anti-aircraft missile that's switched on. It's called SEAD, Suppression of Enemy Air Defense, a prelude to gaining air superiority, something that Vladimir Putin failed to do as he sent his troops to attack in towards Kyiv, and has failed to do in any operation in Ukraine so far. It is a prerequisite for a successful invasion. Why? Why here? Well, this is where 80% of Venezuela's oil is and where it's exported from. So it comes from the Orinoco oil belt up to this region where a lot of it is refined and then out to the rest of the world. The MU's Marines, supported by F-35s from USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Group, will storm ashore and seize the refineries and the oil fields intact. They'll threaten the further oil fields in this Orinoco belt. They seize the regime's only source of money. And with Maduro dead or in hiding, or captured and the oil fields secured, the US stops. They don't occupy the country, they strangle it. They announce a no-fly zone, daring what's left of the Venezuelan military to fight. Any unit that remains loyal to Maduro will be destroyed from the air. The US then offers a deal to the surviving generals, to the opposition parties, handing over the drug traffickers, and oil revenue will be turned back on under a new US-friendly government. That is merely one scenario. There are a number of other different ways that the US could take this country, but that is probably the most effective and the one at least risk to US troops coming in the ground.
There are reports that you are considering strikes within Venezuela. Is that true?
No.
That you made a decision on that?
No, it's not true.
So briefing it like this, it sounds like a clean and surgical plan, but war is never clean. What if the CIA can't find Maduro? What if the Venezuelan military, 150,000 strong and armed with Russian missiles, decides it wants to fight? What if the collective us, Maduro's fanatical street gangs, start a bloody guerrilla war? America has a history of invasions that were supposed to be easy, but became bloody quagmires. As US warships sit on Venezuela's doorstep, the battle plan is drawn, the assets are in place, and the world holds its breath as President Trump's finger hovers over the trigger. So hopefully we'll not have to go and describe the US invasion and compare it to what we've theorized about here. But thank you for watching another episode of Battle Plans Exposed. Please, if you've got any comments, if you want us to cover any subjects, put them in the comments below. But more importantly, please subscribe and click like. Thank you.